Welcome back to Livewire. I'm Luke Burbank here with Elena Passarello. Okay, our next guest is a stand-up comedy legend who I've been a fan of for pretty much ever. Gary Gulman has appearances on all of the late-night shows. He's got an amazing HBO special out called The Great Depression and a book titled Misfit, Growing Up Awkward in the 80s. And we were lucky enough to have Gary perform his comedy for the Livewire audience. Take a listen to Gary Gulman, recorded live at the Alberta Rose Theater in Portland, Oregon.
Thank you. Hello. I came to promote a book, but I also love to do stand-up comedy, and I love books. This was a great melding of my two passions. One of the great things about the century we live in is that you can get a book in as little as 3 seconds. Maybe a day would keep you from reading what you want to read. And I compare that to what I grew up with in the 1970s and 80s, where I got my books through the Scholastic Book Club, where it took me 10 days to get my mom to write out a check. That was 10 business days. That was her policy. And then you would bring in the check with the book choice. We were only able to afford one. I would get one book and no posters, just a book. And you would bring that in September, and then the book would be delivered senior year of high school. So I got my diploma and Hop on Pop the same afternoon, and obviously my verbal suffered. I feel I would have thrived in the millennial Gen Z generation because I was very sensitive and thirsty. The Gen Z kids, much nicer to each other than we were, and it's no coincidence that they are much better hydrated. Then water was just not a consideration when I was growing up. And a lot of people from my generation will say, well, we didn't even need it. We needed it desperately. Desperately. We walked around dizzy and listless all day long. We were irritable, if you remember. And we would get maybe we would get to go to the drinking fountain twice a week. And I remember the teacher would count how long we got to sip. This was our water supply through Wednesday, and she would stand there and say 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, and I was outraged. And I remember I would say, first of all, it's Mississippi. You're costing me an entire syllable of water. And I'm not surprised you're using Mississippi to deploy your horrific drinking fountain policy. How apt. My word, it was a strange time when they weren't worried about the right things. Like, they were very concerned about the scissors from art class being. I remember in kindergarten, the art teacher, every time we used scissors, there was like a 10-minute dissertation on how to pass scissors. And I remember thinking at the time, oh, this must be something that people do a lot. Pass scissors to each other. And I'm not exaggerating. I have never passed anyone a pair of scissors in my life. And there was a whole etiquette to passing scissors, and I could have summed it up in one just kind of, all right, you'll never pass scissors, but for some reason, if you ever find yourself passing scissors, you're a mayor, and there's a ribbon cutting at a bridge. Okay, when you're passing the scissors, don't make a frenzied stabbing motion. Don't go like this. Just. And also, those scissors were not dangerous. You couldn't cut Jell-O with those scissors. And yet the teacher would hide them in the bottom drawer, bottom left drawer with the lockable drawer where there had to be a bottle of tequila in there. There had to be. But anyhow, she would lock them in the drawer. Okay, fine. But she would leave that paper cutter like you could behead a rhinoceros with that thing. Oh yeah, teacher, hide the safety scissors, of course. Leave that portable guillotine out for everyone to play with. So I grew up, I mean, this period is what I cover in my book. Although these aren't jokes from my book. I'm not a 1980s comedian where I type up my act and sell it to you for $26.95. I bought one of those guys' books, and it was $26.95, and I was outraged. I was like, this is just his act. And then the only solace I could find was that I didn't live in Canada. Those sweet, sweet angels are getting gouged on book prices. But I grew up in a very unusual sect of Judaism called poor. Which, if you know any culture, there's a version of you in every culture, but there are poor Jews, there are rich Jews, there are burglar Jews, and everything in between. So we run the gambit, but we were poor, but we never felt poor because my dad was a very kind, generous man. He had this policy. He would say, if there's something you really want, just ask me, and I will try to find the money. And then frequently he would come through, and then just as frequently he would explain to us why we didn't need what we wanted, but he would reason it out. And I remember one year I wanted to play hockey in 1978. I wanted to keep playing hockey. I'd played one season, I enjoyed the skating, and so I wanted to keep playing, but they had raised the price from $50 to $500, and no, I know it was outrageous. And so I went to my father. I said, I'd really like to keep playing hockey. He said, if you really want to keep playing hockey, we'll try to find the money for you to play this sport you've shown no potential in. Also, Gar, Jews have acquitted themselves with very little distinction in hockey. He said, I can't name a Jewish hockey player in the Hall of Fame, but let's check out the sports almanac, and we'll count how many Jewish players there are in the Hockey Hall of Fame. So I grabbed the sports almanac that I'm not making this up. I got from the Scholastic Book Club. They had a book fair, and you could pick one free book, and I got the sports almanac it was from like 1975 or whatever, but I got the book and I brought it over to my dad. He said, all right, we're counting the Jewish players in the Hockey Hall of Fame. Ready, done. This was 1978. There were 0 Jewish players in the Hockey Hall of Fame in 1978. Now, of course, there are 0 Jewish players in the Hockey Hall of Fame. He said, just for a point of comparison, son, more Jews have been the Messiah. You understand that? You are more likely to be Jesus Christ himself than you are to make the Hockey Hall of Fame. You are more likely to walk on water than you are to skate on it. But if you really want to play, we'll find the money. Yeah, we'll find the money, Jesus. At this age, I'll take wisdom wherever I can get it. And I've always found do unto others as you would have them do unto you to be very valuable. It's basically a sentence, but a blueprint for living an ethical, compassionate, empathetic life. And it's perfectly worded and it's incredibly memorable, which makes me think that there is no way that Jesus improvised that on the Mount. He definitely workshopped it at the different psalm and hymn clubs throughout Galilee and Bethlehem, and he would sit around with his disciples late at night, and they would give feedback, and John, they were very close friends, John would say, oh, that do unto others bit is really, it's come a long way. And he said, I remember the first night you did it at the Proverb Factory on Sunset. It was just a throwaway. You said, treat everybody good. Good night. And do you remember what I said? I said, there's something there. There's something there. I had such a wonderful time tonight, everybody. Good night. Thank you so much.
That was Gary Gulman right here on Livewire. His memoir, Misfit, Growing Up Awkward in the 80s, is available now. I'm Luke Burbank here with Elena Passarello. We have to take a very quick break, but don't go anywhere. When we return, we'll hear some music from No Boy, a.k.a. Julian Saporiti. Julian is a historian as well as a musician, and you're going to get a little dose of both coming up, a little history and some music. So stay with us here on Livewire.